Texas congressman has become the first elected Democrat to call on Joe Biden to withdraw from the presidential race. Lloyd Doggett says the 81-year-old was unable to defend his many accomplishments and expose Donald Trump's lies during last week's debate. In a statement, he says, "My decision to make these strong reservations public is not done lightly, nor does it in any way diminish my respect for all that President Biden has achieved." The White House has come to the defense of the president.
The president saying, "I am not a young man. I'm not as a smooth talker as I used to be. I don't walk as easily as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to." I mean, the president is admitting and saying, and this is not the first time, right? He's talked about his age, he's joked about his age many times before. And so you heard that directly from, and we are acknowledging what people are seeing.
Let's get some analysis. I'm joined live in the studio by Mark Watson. He's Senior Fellow at ASPI. Mark, thanks for your time. Now, these calls had been, the discussions, the aggressive panic, as it was called, was happening behind closed doors. Now, public calls for Biden to step down.
That's very significant. There's clearly been a change in tone there coming out of senior Democrats. Overnight, Nancy Pelosi, a real grandee of the Democratic Party, first elected to Congress from California in 1988, I think. And she initially was part of the wall around the president, and now she's saying it's good that we have these discussions about fitness for office. And as I say, she's from California. The leading candidate probably to replace Joe Biden, if that happens, is Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, a telegenic 50-something-year-old, and some of the biggest donors to the Democratic Party are from California. You don't need a new box of crayons to join those dots.
Indeed, and you've got the argument basically that anyone, whether it be Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer, a governor in Michigan, because there is an argument you go for someone in a swing state like Michigan and a woman as well, that she might be more potent. But then the whole question is, how do they get it done? How do they get it done in the time frame? And how do they get it done without getting Kamala Harris being the nominee? Because that is seen as not a great option either for the Democratic Party.
No, that's a real hurdle for them to clear. You would have to bypass a sitting vice president in Kamala Harris, a woman of colour, to get to another candidate outside the current White House vice presidency. She would almost have to agree on some level to do this, otherwise the ruckus inside the party would be so great, I think. But the issue of where you look next, it just looks to me like the next generation's probably one election away from where they want them to be. But Gavin Newsom, for me, is the prime candidate. How you do that in the Democratic Party, I'm sure there'll be a lot of Democratic Party functionaries poring over the regulations and can it happen? If so, what can happen? Remembering, Kieran, that it's not about the November date for the election. The Democratic National Convention is next month. They're only about 6 weeks away from actually standing up in front of the whole country and endorsing someone for the president.
But it really was so bad, wasn't it?
It was terrible.
You know, as an ally, as a country that has such a huge amount at stake, we've got quite a lot of equity in what happens in November. And watching it last Friday was sad, wasn't it? When you saw how bad the president was.
It was pretty much as bad as it could have been. We all knew going into that debate that all President Biden really had to do was to look presidential. And ditto really for President Trump, former President Trump. But unfortunately, right out of the gate, President Biden looked slow and weak and off message and struggling, and I don't think he ever really recovered. You know, I know there was, as I say, initially there was a wall built around him by some Democrats saying, well, it's one bad performance, it's not going to decide the election. That tone is changing now not just inside the Democratic Party, but in their public statements.
Well, how many excuses have they had? First of all, he had a cold, and then secondly, many excuses. It was the time of day, and then he said in the last couple of hours to Democratic donors that he'd had all this international travel prior to the debate, but he'd been in Camp David for a week before preparing and resting.
Just over the weekend, Carl Bernstein, one half of the Bernstein and Woodward Washington Post pair that investigated Watergate, which led to the resignation of President Nixon. So no, anti-democratic journalist by any stretch. He said that his Democrat insiders have been saying for 12 months they have noticed a marked decline in President Biden's mental acuity. Now, that's secondhand from a journalist in Bernstein, but nonetheless, it sounds like, in a way, the Democrats have created their own problem. They've ignored a problem, and ignoring a problem never solves a problem.